Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Jesse with Carolina Whitetails, and once again, I appreciate you joining us. And we're taking a break from the deer stand and from the outdoors for a little indoors edition where we get a chance to talk with some really cool and interesting people. I'm always excited to talk with my guest, but I'm really looking forward to speak with my guest tonight because he's the first guest that I've had that's from my home state of North Carolina. I've recently come across his YouTube channel, and I'm glad to have him here. He's the host of Southern Extreme TV, Blake Myers. Blake, how's it going, man?
Going good, Bubba. Sounds like kind of the same thing you're doing, taking a little break this afternoon from the deer hunting and just trying to take it easy on a Wednesday night.
Yep, just taking it easy. And my kids had church tonight, so taking a break from the stand. Well, like I said, I just recently came across your channel, and for people who haven't watched your channel and watched your videos, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your channel and how you started it and what made you start it?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, Southern Extreme TV started probably about 9 years ago, and it was not started by myself solely. It was actually started by myself and two other guys. This was something that we started right whenever I came out of finishing my AA degree through a community college playing baseball. Came back home and teamed up with two guys where we started videoing each other, doing some videos and actually kind of logging some hunts. And our idea was that we could take these hunts to mainstream media on the television network and start local and then start trying to build from there. And at the time, obviously, that's a very difficult avenue to go down. So that basically led us into YouTube, where I created a YouTube channel, Southern Extreme TV. So if you go back to season 1, very early on, you'll actually see some hunts from up in Canada where I'm actually not featured in any of that stuff. That is a buddy by the name of Nick, who's up there doing those hunts. So that's kind of where Southern Extreme TV got its start. And over the 1 to 2 years into that, people kind of branched off and gave up. I ain't gonna say gave up on the videography aspect of it, but didn't take it quite as serious as what I was doing. And I guess you can say that I kind of took that to the next level as far as YouTube goes, where actually trying to produce and publish videos on a consistent basis. But a little bit about Southern Extreme TV. It started out initially, the sole purpose was whitetail deer hunting. I mean, that is my passion. That is my dream. That is what makes me tick at the end of the day. But over the past probably 4 years, I would say Southern Extreme TV has really started to make a transition into what is really holistic in my life from the outdoors perspective. Turkey hunting, coyote hunting, deer hunting, gun reviews, product reviews that revolve around that hunting aspect. And there's some fishing videos out there. Obviously this is a big time hunting channel, but it's mainly revolving around the outdoors and basically my life right now. And that's kind of the transition that I've seen happen in the last probably 4 to 5 years on the channel.
Cool, man. How and when did you really get into hunting? Was it something that, maybe your dad did or your family did, or how did you kind of fall in love with deer hunting and hunting in general?
Absolutely. So obviously from North Carolina, you know a little bit of the struggles of the deer population we've had, and it's gradually gotten better. But from the time that I could walk all the way down as a young boy, I'm an only child of my dad. I grew up around him. He was big in the woods, big hunter, fisherman, you name it, he did it. And he had two brothers as well. He still has one that's still alive that was big hunters as well. So I grew up in a hunting family. I grew up chasing my dad, wanting to go in the stand with him. And that's really and truly where I got my passion from, was seeing him leave and go hunting and wanting to be with him. And once I did get old enough where he could drag me along, I mean, I remember vaguely back, early ages, and even hearing some of the stories from Dad. you know, where I was young enough where I was actually holding on the backside of him where he was climbing up the deer stand so I could sit on a 5-gallon bucket. You know, wasn't old enough to shoot or anything like that. I just wanted to be out there in the woods with him. So that's where I got my true passion from. And then it's kind of, you know, spiraled into where it is now. So it's definitely came from an early age. I was somewhat born into it.
Cool, man. Well, before we get too far along, as far as deer hunting, how has your season been going this deer season? Have you had any luck, or how's it been going?
Well, this is hands down the toughest North Carolina season that I have had, probably in the last, I'm going to say 4 to 5 years. You know, the last 2 years I have truly been blessed with some very decent bucks here from my home state. But this year, the number of deer that we are seeing in the deer stand on trail cameras, on top of the quality of the deer that we've been seeing this year, has just went downhill. And, you know, sometimes in North Carolina, for whatever reason, it seems like here in the western portion of the state, we go through years where it's like that. We have we call it a drought, if you will. But this year's been a grind. We've got 2 or 3 decent deer that have been extremely spotty on trail cameras. And, you know, right now we're grinding it out. It's been tough here in North Carolina. We were fortunate enough to make a trip up to Ohio back first week of November. I've got a series coming out where we were fortunate enough to harvest 2 really good Ohio whitetail off of public land up there. It's actually the first time that we have ever traveled out of the Carolinas hunting. So other than that Ohio trip, man, it's been a grind for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of been the same way here. A lot of the bucks that I saw last year, you know, usually I hunt the same property year after year for the most part. There's a few places here and there that I hunt, but a lot of bucks that I've seen in like last year, they've disappeared, you know, a lot of the bigger mature bucks. So I don't know what's going on, you know, it could be a number of things, but it's been a grind here also. Now, do you there where you live now and or where you're at in North Carolina, do you hunt your own property, or do you just knock on doors and get permission, or do you have a piece of property that you hunt?
So right here in this little area that I'm from, I am fortunate enough that my family owns right around 30 acres. However, we've killed 1 decent buck off of that property in my entire lifetime. And that buck was harvested probably 2 years ago by my uncle. And I mean, we still harvest bucks off that place, but it's just, we've got different properties that produce different quality deer, different deer from different across the whole spectrum. So I'm fortunate enough to have that 30 acres there. That is a family farm, but I'm extremely fortunate to have a lot of friends of the family and just a lot of people that we have permission to hunt their property. So I'm going to say 90 to 95% of our places we hunt are actually owned by other people. We do have, I'm going to say, right around 250 acres that's divided between 100 acres each that is actual leases that we lease with multiple other people. But then the rest of the properties that we hunt are really and honestly small private tracts that are owned by either elderly people or people that we know of just through family, friends, church, whatever the case may be. And some of the places were actually properties that I helped out managing coyotes and predator that just kind of led from that into turkey hunting, and from turkey hunting into whitetail hunting. So we've been blessed with the properties that we've been able to hunt here the past probably 4 to 5 years.
On some of these properties that you hunt, do you do anything as far as food plots or feeders or things like that, like in the off season to get ready for season, or do you pretty much set trail cameras and try to locate a mature deer?
So we've got 2 properties that I would say you could argue you have true food plots, if you will. One property we have is a 60-acre tract. It's got about a 15-acre cut over finger that separates 2 fields. And the fields are actually leased out to local farmers that rotate it between beans and corn each year. And then once they harvest either the beans or the corn, then they plant behind it winter wheat. So we're fortunate enough to where, a local farmer actually takes care of that aspect for us. Now, here on my family's property, we've actually got two fields that are not quite as large, probably 2 to 3 acres apiece. And really and truly, it just depends. We've got a good family friend that I actually coyote hunt with a little bit. He does a little bit of farming on his own, so we let him come in and plant the fields in corn if he gets around to it. If he doesn't get around to planting it in corn, we keep it bush hogged. And from there, we're mainly running trail cameras on pinch points, funnels, fingers, just natural travel quarters, trying to figure out where those deer are traveling from their bed and into their feeding areas. So really and truly just one, maybe two pieces of property that we got that you could argue is set up as a food plot.
Yeah, I was just curious of maybe any techniques or anything that you do as far as planting things or how you kind of go about it. But now that we're kind of going into the later half of deer season, and it's getting a little bit colder, or it should be. It's not getting much colder around here, but a lot of the deer have felt pressure from other hunters. How do you change your game as far as like how you approach the hunt this time of year as opposed to like early bow season? Like, do you adjust your game as far as going in the woods this time of year when deer have been pressured and have been rutting?
So it's kind of twofold. Obviously, it depends on your typical situation or your specific situation. With us, as I mentioned, we're fortunate enough to where we have a multitude of different properties. We don't have acreage wise a lot of property, but we have a lot of small parcels. And one of the biggest keys that I have seen in the past 4 to 5 years is we have those select properties that we learn early on that produce very good quality bucks early season. So let's say that September to the last week of October. And those are the properties where we've got good deer on trail camera that are showing up consistently. And we spend a lot of time and effort on those properties trying to harvest those whitetail. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to basically have a good separation between properties that either produce really good deer early season, which we can chase, but it allows us to then take that other half of our properties and basically run trail cameras and really take the time to pin down and figure out a good mature whitetail, to figure out if he's moving through that area. And what we found is half of our properties produce good whitetail early season, and the other half we may not have what we would consider a shooter buck off of that specific property until the first week of December. So that's been the biggest ticket for us, is being able to figure out which properties those deer want to live at and spend their time at early season, and then figure out what properties those deer want to do their rutting activity in. And those are the properties that we're going to be focusing on right now, for the simple fact that property has been less pressured than some of the other properties. So what that creates is a good safe haven for those deer that are getting pressured around those properties. They actually feel safe coming back in there because they've been coming through there from September, October, all the way into now November. Now they're starting to get pressured on those outside properties, and they use our property as a safe haven. And once we get them on camera consistently, then we can slide in there, and our success rate has went up tremendously. Now, if you're not quite fortunate enough to have a multitude of properties to that extent, the one thing that I'm going to be looking for to try to change up my tactic is I'm going to be looking for some thick cover. I'm looking for something where a buck is going to feel safe to bed down in the middle of the day and wait until that last minute to get up out of his bed and basically go to a staging area. So I am looking for bedding and staging areas, because this time of year is when you see a lot of those big boys start going nocturnal. And what you need to find is you've got to find where he is sleeping at during the day, and then try to find that little section or that little strip of property that deer wants to hang out until he goes into his area that he's wanting to go rut and check does. And if you can find that type of location late season, you can typically be pretty successful.
Now, to add to that, or to go with that, I know that you have a lot of knowledge when it comes to hunting, and as you said, you've been hunting for a long time, and that's really good advice in the later part of the season. But like, what would you say to maybe a kid or maybe even a guy that's just starting to hunt and kind of getting into the whole hunting thing, and maybe something that you have learned that kind of really helped you that you wish you would have been told years ago? What's something that you would say to somebody just getting into deer hunting?
It's for me in this day and age, it two things. And the first thing is, put your seat time in. You're not going to learn. You can sit down and watch as many YouTube videos, as many people like myself talk. But until you actually get out into your area and you figure out your properties and you put your time in the woods, in the outdoors, and actually learn how these animals think, what they're wanting to do in different situations and different times of the year, that's how you learn, is getting up off the couch, out of the living room, and spending time in the outdoors. And you got to learn that it is a learning curve. I mean, you're doing something new. You're doing something you've never done before. Just like anything else in life, you've got to put your time in to try to be good and try to be successful at it. And the more time and the more effort that you put into it, the better the results are going to be, now and on down the road. The second part of that is, don't be scared to ask questions. That's one of the worst things that I see in the outdoors, is somebody that is really, really reserved whenever it comes to the outdoors. If they don't know, or maybe they feel like they're ignorant on something, you got to be willing to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to send guys messages, whether it's on social media, YouTube, wherever it may be, even if it's your local guy down at your gun shop or whatever the case may be. Do not hesitate to ask questions. The only dumb question is the one that's not asked, in my opinion. So the more that you can go out and start talking to people, and you're going to figure out the good ones and the bad ones. I mean, there's, just like anything, you got good guys and bad guys, but I'm going to say 90 to 95% of the guys that are out there in this industry and in the outdoors, they're good guys. And everybody's been there at that point. Everybody started out and everybody had to come from something. So I would say the majority of the people would welcome those questions and would welcome that seeking of knowledge. So that would be the two things that I would say is for a new hunter.
I think that's good advice. I always like to ask that to different people when I talk to them, because I think it's important to put a positive message to people that may be getting into hunting, because the game has changed a whole lot from probably when both you and I were younger, as far as social media and stuff, because a lot of people, I've seen it where they people maybe shoot a deer that's not considered a shooter buck, and with the comments and people being negative, and I just think that's terrible for people getting into the whole hunting game. I think that's a terrible thing, and it's not something that I ever had to deal with, because Lord knows I killed plenty of small bucks and plenty of does when I was starting out, but I didn't have to deal with any criticism from anybody. So I always just like to ask people that I talk to about that, because of all that going on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's one of the negatives that you see in our industry from a social media standpoint. And that's something that is I'm going to say a tough pill to swallow, being from North Carolina, because, you look at stuff on social media and you start comparing those deer to Iowa, Missouri,
Yeah.
Canada, Ohio, all those type places. And for me, the big thing you've got to do is you really have got to set down, and in my opinion, you've got to look at that property and you've got to assess, kind of what your goal is. And you've got to put everybody else's opinion to the side. You've got to put your family members' opinions to the side. You've got to look at what your goal is as an outdoorsman, as a hunter, and try to achieve that goal. You may be a guy that's working third shift that maybe only gets to hunt 3 days out of the season. And if you're going out there and the good Lord blesses you with a 4-pointer or a spike, whatever the case may be, that's your time, that's your property, that is your animal that was put in place for you to potentially harvest it if you so choose. And that's your trophy at the end of the day. And it's not up for me. It's not up for anybody else to make that decision. It's up to you. I mean, you can spend all day and night going into the analytics of how to grow big deer and how to increase the quality of deer on a specific property. I mean, you can chase that rabbit as far down the hole as you want to go, but if it's a trophy in your eyes, that's all it needs. That's all that matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks from any other state, any other street. Doesn't matter. If that's a trophy to you, and that's what you want to harvest, that's your tag to feel. You feel it the best way that you want.
I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of I enjoy these videos as far as growing big bucks and all that. I love watching it, but I think sometimes for people that are not as familiar with hunting as maybe us or other people, it's a little bit intimidating, and it's all about the big buck rather than just getting in the woods and hunt, and I always like to make that point that that's what it's about, just getting in the woods, and I think that's good advice though. Now, you mentioned you're in Western North Carolina. I see you got a couple deer on the wall behind you. What's the biggest deer that you've been fortunate enough to kill in that part of the state?
I've killed around low 120 mark. I've got one deer that's maybe a 124, depending on how you score him. I mean, he's going to be within a couple inches of that. The biggest deer to date that I've killed actually came out of South Carolina, right across the line. He was right at 128, not even really into the 130 mark. So just a really good, solid, strong 8-point buck. But for around here in this little area, if you see a deer that breaks that 100-inch mark, I mean, people throw those numbers around, the 120 and the 130 number around like it's, just for fun. But it takes a lot of North Carolina bone to get to those marks. So I mean, it's hard to compare them to deer from other states, but yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to kill several deer in the 120s. Yeah,
I mean, as far as North Carolina, that's a really good deer when you get into the 120s. I mean, that's a big deer, anywhere in the state. Now you mentioned it a few minutes ago, and I've watched several videos on your channel of predator hunting, coyote hunting. That's not something that I've really done much of. Can you talk about that a little bit? And like for myself, people that maybe not be as familiar with it.
Yes. So the coyote hunting kind of came into play, I'm going to say about 8 years ago. And, it's something that I'd been doing well before I started videoing anything other than deer hunting. And basically it started out with me taking a shotgun that was given to me and putting duct tape around the end to tape a flashlight onto it. I seen a guy on I think on YouTube or on a television show going out and calling in a coyote and shooting with a shotgun. So I said, well, heck, it can't be that hard. I started out with a little hand call and a flashlight taped on the end of a shotgun, and it gradually has grown into what it is now, where we're running AR platform rifles with thermal imaging scopes, suppressors, and I mean, just this whole big shindig. So it's something that is definitely unique, and it's actually something that is really blossomed in this little area that I'm from. I mean, you've got people that are fighting over property, trying to get on different places to hunt coyotes, but it's definitely a unique thing to do. And it's something that I enjoy doing. It's a great way to meet new landowners. It's a great way to get onto property that, even if you're not going to be able to deer hunt it or turkey hunt it, we coyote hunt some absolutely beautiful, gorgeous properties that we would never have the opportunity of probably seeing if it wasn't for what we do from a predator control aspect. So I've been blessed with the opportunities this provided. But man, you talk about a fun rush and just the ability to go and hang out with your friends and ride around in the truck at night. And I think the one thing that I really like about it is it's such a different type of hunting versus our typical whitetail hunting that the majority of people do here in North Carolina. I like to say it's a combination between, turkey hunting and hog hunting, I guess. I mean, you're in the truck, you're going to a property, you're going in, you're setting up, and then you're in and out of that property in 20 to 30 minutes, whether you've shot a coyote or not. You're back in the truck and you're on to the next spot. So it's definitely something that is one of my most memorable things to do throughout the year. So I enjoy the heck out of it.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's something that's really become really popular in this area as well. I just haven't had the opportunity to go, but years ago, like when I was younger, you rarely saw a coyote in this area, and for whatever reason, they're everywhere now. I've seen a couple from the deer stand, but and it's so the whole predator control was really something that's exploded around here. But I know it's from talking to other people, and it's had a devastating effect on a lot of small game. Is it kind of the same way there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, going back to talking about some of the properties we've got, the one property that we actually have a local farmer that plants it in beans and corn. We picked this property up, I'm going to say about 8 years ago. When we first picked the property up, we had on average about, I'm going to say 15 turkeys. And that was toms, jakes, hens, all of them kind of grouped together. And we were able to take a very good assessment of this just for the simple fact that, whenever they come and cut the corn during deer season, I mean, that's where those turkeys lived at. They lived in that cornfield. They flew down in that cornfield and they stayed there all day until they went to go roost. So we had a very good handle on the turkey population for that area. Well, the first year that we had it, we went in and we killed, I believe it was 9 coyotes in that 1 year off that one property, from January to February. So we removed those coyotes off that property. Well, that next spring, or that next fall rather, our turkey population went from around that 15 to 20 range to about 35 to 45. Well, every year from then on, we have been able to kill almost double-digit coyotes off of that property. And in correlation with that, you've had about an average of 10 to 15 turkeys on that population increase just off that one specific property. And we've seen that across the board on a lot of our different properties that we manage from a predator control aspect. Now, that property there is one of those just random, shiner of a property where you can truly see the work that you've done from a predator control aspect actually backfeeding into your turkey population as well as your deer population as well. And from a turkey hunter, I see the benefit of predator hunting probably more so in the turkey population than I do in a whitetail population. And I know that the whitetail population is suffering, but not to the extent that those young turkeys get just absolutely obliterated by those coyotes if you've got a large number of them in that area.
Yeah. It sounds fun, man. I definitely want to try to get with somebody and maybe try it. It sounds pretty fun. Well, man, before we finish up here, what's your game plan as far as going forward? I know you're going to get back in the deer stand and what you got, maybe coming up.
So yeah, right now it's grind time. We're grinding out the rest of the deer season. We've got a couple good deer that we're trying to get on the ground. So right now, the coyote hunting, the predator hunting is kind of at the wayside. My goal is to grind out the rest of December, try to get a good buck on the ground. Come January, it's going to be full bore predator control. It is going to be on. That's when a lot of our properties open up, when the guys that typically deer hunt these properties that we're not allowed to get on, they'll let us come and actually coyote hunt after deer season once their season is done. And so that opens up a huge amount of property for us to gain access to. So we're definitely going to be grinding out deer season rest of December. January, February, we'll be doing some coyote hunts. I think we we've got the potential to be making some trips this year on some predator control stuff. We've got Kentucky, I think, lined up, potentially Virginia, and then potentially the East Coast that we may be looking at doing some traveling towards that January, February mark, where it gets pretty tough hunting here in Western North Carolina. And then, you know, come March, I'll typically take a little bit of a break. Crappie fishing comes in, so I like to spend some time with my grandpa and my dad doing some crappie fishing and taking a breather away from trying to, you know, film and edit every single night and try to get videos out. And that's a good little breather right before turkey season comes in. So we've got a full next couple of months coming up.
Sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and giving me a little bit of time to talk with you. I'm going to keep following your channel and keep watching your videos and see what you have in the future. Can you tell folks where they can find you on social media so they can follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you just go on to your search bar and search for Southern Extreme TV, you will find me there. Got, you know, like I said, full Facebook page, you know, Instagram and YouTube. Those are three main platforms. Don't really use Twitter or anything like that, but those three you can find me and pretty much stay up to date with everything that's going on.
All right, man. Sounds good. Well, folks, I appreciate you checking this video out. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and keep following Carolina Whitetails. I appreciate it.